Welcome to our Reading Month Caribbean Contemporary Classics Week, sponsored by Hodder Education. I am Jameson Alphonse, and it is an honor to be your moderator for such a prestigious Hodder Education event. The theme for Reading Month is All Hands on Deck for Literacy, and we are indeed privileged to be bolstered by an invaluable sponsor and partner such as Hodder Education. 4 students from schools within the education community have been selected to read excerpts from the Hodder Education Caribbean Contemporary Classics collection. This is a collection of vibrant stories overflowing with life and the acute observations about society. In addition, each student will provide a personal reflection on the text followed by the recommendation. Please stay tuned as you are enlightened. Over Our Way is a Hodder Education Caribbean Contemporary Classics written by Jean DaCosta and Velma Pollard. We cannot see the beginning or ends of our way, but we can tell some of the stories on what happens over the way. Stories which we alone can tell. Stories about friendships, our loneliness, our games, our crimes, our sorrows and joy, and our triumphs and our dreams. Let's listen to 14-year-old Keyshawn Alphonse, who is a Form 3 student of the Soufriere Comprehensive Secondary School. Her love for reading has mushroomed over the years, and she is also the proud winner of the OECS Reading Competition in 2018. More importantly, reading has broadened her view of life and affords her the opportunity to escape her reality at the simple flick of a page.
I selected an excerpt from a short story in the Over Our Way Hodder Education Caribbean Contemporary Classic by Jean DaCosta and Velma Pollard called The Devils of Rose Hall. This part of the story is the climax and, in my opinion, the most interesting part. The Rev McGregor preached all over the district, visiting villages in the hills and the small towns of St. James and Trelawney. He soon had a reputation for being a fearless, outspoken man. The young fellows of Falmouth got a bit annoyed with all this coming from someone no older than themselves. They decided to try out the Rev McGregor's famous courage. On the first Sunday in every month, Rev McGregor did not prepare a sermon. Instead, he put a closed box for suggestions beside the pulpit, and any note that he pulled out at random was made the text of that day's preaching. A dangerous practice, I would have said, but the Rev McGregor liked to live dangerously. On the first Sunday in November, the box was carefully emptied of all suggestions save one. My uncle, who was in church on that day, says he doesn't know how it was done because the box was locked and the Rev McGregor had the only key tucked safely in the breast pocket of his black suit. The note was folded small, but he got it open and read out. Dear Minister, we have heard your courageous words spoken out against superstition and beliefs in black magic. Prove to us that such beliefs are false and groundless as you claim. To do this, you can spend next Friday night, 13th November, alone in Rose Hall Great House. Yours respectfully, some citizens of Falmouth. Well, they got their money's worth of sermon that day. The Rev McGregor preached for 3 hours on voodoo, obeah, tea leaf readings, palmistry, astrology, and gambling. He mentioned idleness, gossip, bearing false witness against your neighbor, and the deceits of the world, the flesh, and the devil. I take up this challenge, he cried in ringing tones. I take it up with a happy heart for the sake of all this congregation. And when we meet again next Sunday, I will tell you of the folly of superstition and the deceits of Satan. The service ended, and all the members of the congregation flocked around him, begging him to disregard the challenge as the work of mischief makers. Nobody had quite enough courage to come out and say that he would be in danger. Not after that sermon. But no one thought he should go. Some said that it was beneath his dignity, others that it was wasting valuable time, and everybody agreed that it was a nasty, unhealthy house where he would catch his death of cold or be bitten by a rat. But the more they argued, the more stubborn he became. until he got angry and would hear no more. "Since you are all so concerned about my well-being," he said to the three most persistent parishioners, "why don't you come with me on Friday night and see to it that I'm comfortable and happy? You won't have to stay, you know." "I couldn't permit that," he added wickedly. They shut up and left him alone after that, but promised to go with him to Rose Hall at the appointed time. Of course, people gossiped like mad about it, and many more tried to dissuade him from going to Rose Hall, especially on Friday the 13th. The young fellows who were friends of my uncle did a lot to spread the story. On Friday afternoon, there was quite a crowd outside the minister's manse waiting to see him off in his buggy. Some looked scared, some were laughing, some were wringing their hands and conversing in whispers as if speaking of the dead. The only calm person was the Rev. McGregor. At about 4 o'clock, the buggy moved off, for it was quite a long drive from Falmouth to Rose Hall, and the evenings were short. At the bottom of the hill, just where the shaggy, overgrown driveway began, the horse shied and refused to go any further. In any case, the road became little better than a stony track, and the Rev. McGregor was not willing to force his horse on such a treacherous path. The friends who came with him helped him unpack the folding cot, the small suitcase with his nightgear, and the little basket with his supper. They took everything up to the door, and as it was getting quite dark, one of them thoughtfully lit the lantern they had brought. Then they bade him a hasty good night, with the excuse that it was getting late and they had a long drive back to Falmouth. No one set foot inside the house with him. When they had disappeared down the hill, the Rev. John McGregor stepped into the darkened hall and looked around for a place to spend the night. He did not fancy the main hall with its rotting floor and open windows. The large banqueting room was little better. All the windows were broken, and drafts of air stirred the cobwebs on the walls and made the yellow light of the lantern flicker. He decided to try upstairs, and his feet sounded very loud and hollow on the wooden staircase as he went up, taking his time in case any of the boards had rotted through. Everything smelled damp and moldy, and there was a furtive silence, as if many ears were tuned to the noises of his intruding feet. The bedroom at the back was the driest part of the house. The floor was less dusty, and the windows were still undamaged. The last glow of the setting sun came from the windows to the west, filling the room with a deep ruby red light in which the flame of the lantern glowed pale gold. As he set up the camp bed with its blanket, the sun dipped behind the hills and the lantern shone out brightly in the thickening dark. He munched his egg and cheese sandwiches slowly, drank hot chocolate from a thermos flask, and watched from the window as the stars shone out brightly in the sky. He said his evening devotion silently, standing with his hands resting on the weather-beaten windowsill. Then he undressed, blew out the lantern, and pulled the blankets over him. He lay awake for a short while, thinking over the events of the week and going over certain phrases in his sermon for the following Sunday. Then suddenly he fell asleep, with the creaking and the whispering of the old house echoing in his ears. His last thought was to wonder sleepily how many hundred rats must be living in Rose Hall, and how many traps. In this piece, we see Rev. John McGregor, the main character, accept a dangerous challenge. Despite the pleadings and warnings of his congregation, he follows through with the challenge, and in the end, he proves his point. I would recommend this Hodder Education Caribbean Contemporary Classic text to children, teenagers, and adults, more specifically, anyone with goals and achievements that he or she wants to fulfill but is still doubtful about them. I say this because society today may sometimes be very harsh, judgmental, and discouraging. I think this story depicts that perfectly. The main character, Rev. John McGregor, was discouraged by almost everyone, but he believed in himself and then proved everyone wrong. The moral of the narrative, in my opinion, is to trust in oneself and to persevere in the face of criticism and discouragement from others. If you enjoy this story as much as I do, I highly recommend reading The Sun's Eye and The Young Warriors from the Hodder Education Caribbean Contemporary Classics. Visit their website at www.hoddereducation.co.uk.
What are some of the interesting events that are occurring over your way? To obtain a copy, I urge you to visit the local bookstores, Delivery Express and People's Discount Book and More, both located in Castries, and Books and More located in Miku. There, you can choose from a range of titles in classic contemporary fiction from the heart of the Caribbean. Also, look out for our upcoming book fairs at People's Discount Book and More on Victoria Street, Castries from May 19th to 21st, and Books and More in Miku Village on the second week of July. You can also visit Hodder Education website at www.hoddereducation.co.uk.